Before the physics competition, Liam and his crush Ed planned to go street racing together to blow off some steam before the physics competition. When I found out, I immediately informed his parents to stop him. The next day, the news spread all over the internet. Breaking: high school students engage in illegal late-night racing, 2 dead, 1 seriously injured. Emma was one of the casualties. Liam didn't blame me. In fact, years later, he even got down on one knee and proposed to me. But on the day of our wedding, the brakes on the wedding car failed. As I lay in a pool of blood, I reached out to him, but he only smiled and asked, "So, do you finally know what it feels like to be trapped at the scene of a car crash, waiting to die?" Terror filled my eyes. But then I heard his voice, trembling with suppressed rage. "Does it hurt? Emma was only 18. You lived 10 years longer than she did." I died in despair and became nothing more than a wandering soul. After that, I watched Ethan cry and put on a show of grief and deep affection. I saw my parents mentally collapse over my death. Ethan used the opportunity to gain their trust, gradually taking control of my family's business. He manipulated them while they were mourning, stripping my company of all its assets. In the end, he even drove my parents to commit suicide. After everything was done, he sat in front of Emma Carter's grave, holding a bottle of liquor, and murmured, "I've avenged you." I laughed, and then I cried. So, all the years we spent growing up together meant nothing compared to a girl who had only been in his life for 1 year. If I had another chance, I would never interfere in his life again. When I opened my eyes, I had returned to that night in Riverdale. The night Liam was about to go street racing in the mountains for Emma. I was holding on to his arm, trying to stop him. "Whether I go or not has nothing to do with you. Stop meddling in my business," Liam said impatiently. I saw the irritation in his eyes and felt a moment of panic. In my past life, I only knew that racing on an unfamiliar mountain road was dangerous. That's why I kept trying to stop him. I even told his parents, making such a big scene that they had to intervene. Only after his father and mother threatened him did he give up on racing that night. The next day, the news reported that a group of students had died in a racing accident on that very mountain. Back then, I had been relieved that I had stopped Liam. But I never expected that my actions that night would push me into the abyss. Thinking of this, I let go of his arm. "Fine. From now on, I won't interfere with you anymore." Liam clearly hadn't expected me to say that. He looked momentarily stunned, but then he quickly got on his secretly purchased motorcycle and sped away. I watched his retreating figure and turned away without a second thought. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a local news alert. High school students involved in late-night street racing, 10 dead, 2 injured. Unfortunately, Liam and Emma weren't among the dead. They were the 2 who had survived with injuries. This time, I didn't stop Liam, but fate had taken an unexpected turn. He had ended up dragging Emma down with him. Our families had always been close, so my parents took me to the hospital early in the morning to visit him. Liam had broken an arm and a leg. Now, he lay in bed, his limbs encased in plaster. His mother sobbed, her eyes swollen like walnuts. She kept looking at him, wanting to say something, but ultimately swallowed her words, afraid of upsetting him. She held my hand and pleaded, "Sophia, you know Liam listens to you the most. Please talk to him. Help him through this." Did he really listen to me the most? In my past life, Liam had agreed to my requests, but only because I threw tantrums and pestered him relentlessly. Maybe that was why he had grown tired of me. After all, who would like someone who did nothing but nag and control them? I agreed to his mother's request and walked up to Liam. Looking at his injured body, I thought I'd see him in despair. But instead, he looked elated, as if something wonderful had happened. He smiled at me and said, "Yesterday, Emma agreed to be my girlfriend." It felt like he had said it just for my benefit, to make sure I knew not to bother him anymore. Of course, I had no intention of humiliating myself again. I deliberately changed the subject. "Oh? Then I guess you won't be able to compete in the physics competition." His good mood instantly vanished. Liam wasn't particularly outstanding in his studies, except for physics. His talent in the subject had won him a spot in the national physics competition. Everyone had been counting on him to achieve a good ranking. In my past life, he had lived up to expectations, securing first place. His victory had earned him a special admissions offer from a prestigious university. But this time, he wouldn't even be able to compete. The moment I learned about his injury, I called our teacher and volunteered to take his place. After a brief pause, the teacher agreed. After all, my physics grades were no worse than Liam's. More importantly, in my past life, I was a university physics professor. A competition like this was nothing difficult for me. Liam's expression darkened slightly, but in the next second, he forced a smile. "It's fine. I can still take the college entrance exams with Emma." I simply smiled and said nothing. Just then, a commotion broke out outside the hospital room. Last night, Liam had done everything he could to protect Emma, so she wasn't seriously injured. The moment she woke up, she wanted to see him. But she hadn't expected to run into Mrs. Miller, Liam's mother, outside the room. Mrs. Miller knew that Liam had gotten hurt because of Emma, so naturally she wasn't pleased to see her. Without hesitation, she slapped Emma across the face. "You little vixen. If it weren't for you, my son wouldn't be in this condition. Senior year is about to start. How is he supposed to focus on his studies like this?" Emma sobbed pitifully. I'll take responsibility for Liam. Please don't hit me, Auntie." A hospital room door stood between them, but Emma's soft, trembling voice carried through, making her sound helpless and fragile, perfectly fitting the image of an innocent, delicate girl. Liam immediately panicked. He tried to get out of bed, but with his injuries, he lost his balance and crashed to the floor with a loud thud. I stood there, watching him struggle on the ground, feeling a wave of satisfaction rise in my chest. He lifted his head, looking at me with desperation, silently begging for my help. He didn't want to embarrass himself in front of the girl he loved the most. I turned away and walked toward the door. Then, in a loud voice, I said, "Mrs. Miller, Liam heard you hitting someone and got so agitated that he fell out of bed." A crowd had already gathered outside, eager to watch the drama unfold. As soon as I opened the door, everyone turned their attention to the room. There, on the floor, was Liam, sprawled out, unable to get up. The looks in their eyes varied, some mocking, some pitying. The Millers were nouveau rich, and Mrs. Miller had put in a lot of effort to groom Liam into someone worthy of high society. She had raised him with strict etiquette, ensuring that he always presented himself well. But now, he had thrown all that away for a woman, making a complete fool of himself. At that moment, Mrs. Miller's resentment toward Emma reached its peak. Another argument erupted in the hospital room, but I simply turned away, the satisfaction in my heart growing. When I returned to school, Emma was already back as well. For some reason, a rumor had started spreading, one that painted Liam as a heroic figure, bravely shielding Emma from danger. Before long, the story became a hot topic among the seniors, a much-needed distraction from their stressful studies. "Liam is incredible. He's just like the male lead in a novel, pushing the girl away and facing the danger alone. It's a shame he can't compete in the physics competition anymore. Yeah, but saving someone is really admirable." As they spoke, their gazes drifted toward me with pity. Everyone knew that Liam and I had grown up together. They assumed I must be devastated, but right now I only wanted to focus on my studies. I couldn't care less about their ridiculous drama. Nothing would stop me from getting into a good university. In my past life, I had always excelled in my studies. But right before the college entrance exams, Liam had asked me out, saying he wanted to help me relax. On the way, we ran into a gang of thugs. I was beaten and injured, my arm left bruised and swollen. Liam, however, walked away unharmed. Despite the pain, I forced myself to take the exam. But in the end, my scores were much lower than usual, and I couldn't get into my dream school, one of the country's top universities. Back then, I had been heartbroken, determined to retake the exams. And Liam, ever the comforting presence, had persuaded me to attend the same second-tier university as him instead. At the time, I had thought Liam was warm and considerate, that with him around, nothing else mattered. But looking back now, too many things about that night didn't add up. Perhaps, even back then, Liam had already started plotting against me. This time, I wouldn't let him succeed. So, I asked my father for a bodyguard, someone to follow me from a reasonable distance. Even though in this life, I had done nothing to wrong Liam, he was still an unpredictable lunatic. Who knew what he might try? Having a bodyguard around gave me peace of mind. What I hadn't expected was that the first person my bodyguard had to deal with was Emma. After school, she cornered me near an alleyway. Before I could react, she grabbed my wrist and dragged me into a secluded spot. Several gang members were already waiting inside. She was dressed in a pure white dress, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders, a picture-perfect school goddess. But right now, she was leaning intimately against the leader of the gang, her expression sly. "Logan, this is Liam's little childhood sweetheart. I guarantee she's still a virgin. Ruin her for me, and then I'll finally be able to stay by Liam's side without interference. When I have money in the future, I won't forget you guys." I stared at them with indifference, as if looking at a pile of trash. In my past life, I had already known that Emma had inappropriate relationships with multiple men. She took pleasure in having different men around her, and Liam was just one of them. I had tried to tell him the truth, but all I got in return was his resentment. "Emma is already dead. Can you stop tarnishing her name?" From that moment on, I never mentioned Emma in front of him again. To Liam, she was simply a girl with a naturally good personality who attracted admiration. He never once realized her true nature. Emma smirked and reassured Logan, the gang leader, "Don't worry, her family isn't as powerful as Liam's. Even if something happens, I just need to act sweet with him, and he'll take care of it." I laughed. Emma was a fool. Liam's family may have been wealthy, but they were flashy and came from new money. Liam himself flaunted designer brands wherever he went. In contrast, my parents were discreet and humble in the way they conducted business, and I had inherited that from them. I never showed off. Yet, because of this, Emma had assumed I was weak and easy to bully. If we were to compare, Liam's family was nowhere near as powerful as mine. Otherwise, in my past life, he wouldn't have had to wait over 10 years before finally having the chance to take down my family. Under Emma's encouragement, Logan stepped forward, his eyes filled with lecherous intent. Just as he was about to reach for me, a sudden wail of agony filled the alleyway. His arm had been twisted backward by my bodyguard, and within seconds, he was pinned to the ground. Logan tried to scream, but one glance at the cold, merciless expression of my bodyguard sent terror through him. He immediately started begging for mercy. "It wasn't me. Emma made me do it. It was all her idea." Emma, completely shaken, collapsed to the ground, her legs giving out beneath her. I looked down at her and spoke calmly. "You treat Liam like a treasure, but to me, he's nothing more than garbage. Don't ever try to associate me with him again. He's not worth it." Emma wanted to argue, but faced with the bodyguard's presence, she swallowed her words and remained silent. From that day forward, she never approached me again. Instead, she focused all her energy on Liam. Every day after school, she rushed straight to the hospital, staying by his side until late at night, tending to him with utmost devotion. Of course, while doing so, she also made sure to appear fragile and helpless, using the opportunity to ask Liam for money. Emma was well known in school for coming from a poor family. In the past, she had even earned the nickname Cafeteria Belle for helping serve food in the school canteen. So when she started asking Liam for money, he didn't even hesitate. He gave her as much as she wanted and told her to ask for more if it wasn't enough. From that point on, Emma's spending habits became increasingly extravagant. Soon, she had a group of followers trailing behind her. Those who had once mocked her for being poor now dared not say a word. They could only grumble in hushed voices. "So what if she's got Liam now? Does she really think she's special?" "Yeah, she's just using her body to get what she wants." That statement, however, wasn't entirely true. While Emma had indeed been involved with other men, she and Liam had always remained physically pure. Their relationship had never crossed any lines. As for the money, Liam gave it to her willingly. However, a high school student living in a hospital and spending money like water was bound to attract attention. When Mrs. Miller found out, she was furious. Her son had ended up in the hospital because of Emma, and now she had the audacity to take his money behind her back? Storming into the hospital room, she slapped Emma across the face without hesitation. Grabbing her by the hair, she rained down a series of blows. Emma, ever the delicate damsel in distress, didn't fight back. No matter how much Mrs. Miller hit her, she simply endured it with tear-filled eyes, playing the victim perfectly. Liam, seeing the woman he adored being mistreated, struggled to get out of bed and shielded Emma with his own body. He even threw harsh words at his own mother, defending Emma. That night, Liam and Emma ran away from the hospital together. The Miller household descended into chaos, sending out waves of people to search for them. When I got home, my parents were still talking about the situation. Liam always seemed like a good kid, my dad said, shaking his head. Who would have thought he'd cause such a mess over a girl? He's really rebellious. I interjected casually, maybe the two of them are truly in love. After all, in my past life, Liam had spent over a decade patiently waiting for the right moment to take revenge for Emma. If that wasn't true love, what was? My mom gave me a sharp look, as if worried that I was speaking this way because I had fallen for someone myself. Fearing that I'd end up acting as irrational as Liam, she immediately started lecturing me about the dangers of dating as a student. It was only after I repeatedly assured her that I wasn't interested in anyone that she finally dropped the topic. As time passed, the date of the physics competition arrived as scheduled. By the time I returned from the competition, Liam was back at school as well. Though he hadn't fully recovered, he showed up every day with Emma, faithfully pushing his wheelchair. A handsome guy, a beautiful girl, and a touching love story, it was only natural that people envied them. But what was even more ridiculous was how they never tried to be discreet. No matter where you went on campus, you could see them acting intimately, as if the entire school belonged to just the two of them. During gym class, while others were playing sports, Liam and Emma hid under a tree, making out shamelessly. The wet, obscene sounds were impossible to ignore. Those of us who had stayed in the corner to study heard it all, and some of my classmates turned red from embarrassment. Finally, one of the bolder students shouted in their direction, "This isn't your personal romance novel. Could you stop acting like you're in heat all the time? You two might not care about your reputation, but the rest of us do." The sounds behind the tree stopped abruptly. Moments later, Emma pushed Liam's wheelchair out from behind the tree, her face flushed. "How could you eavesdrop on us?" she said, her voice soft and aggrieved. "We were already trying to be discreet." The way she spoke made her seem pitiful, like she was the victim here. But unlike Liam, the rest of my classmates weren't idiots. Hearing her twisted reasoning, they were so furious they immediately started arguing with her. Hands on their hips, scolding her without mercy. No matter how manipulative Emma could be, she was no match for an entire group of angry students. Liam, who always considered himself above petty arguments, wouldn't lower himself to bicker with them either. Instead, he glanced at me through the crowd. Over the years, we had developed an unspoken understanding. Without him saying a word, I knew he wanted me to help Emma out of this situation. What a joke. I wasn't about to wade into this mess. I ignored him completely, pretending I hadn't seen anything, and walked away without a word. In the end, Emma couldn't win the argument and had no choice but to push Liam's wheelchair and leave, defeated. But before long, the sharp voice of the disciplinary director rang out from a nearby corner. "What do you two think you're doing? Call your parents immediately." It turned out that after leaving, Liam had tried to comfort Emma with another round of kissing, only to be caught red-handed by the director. As the director marched them toward the office, he happened to pass by our group. Seeing us diligently studying even during gym class, he couldn't help but comment, "Look at these students. Even during PE, they're still focused on their studies. And then there's you two, hiding in corners, wasting time on nonsense. Being a student means putting your education first." After he left, the classmates he had just praised burst into laughter. "Who says youth has to be about romance? Even the director thinks we should focus on studying. Emma always calls us bookworms just because we actually do our work. But let's be honest, her grades aren't even good enough to keep up with our worst student." I couldn't help but chuckle too. Focusing on our studies was the right choice. Liam and Emma were called to the office, where their parents had to be notified. Coincidentally, I was already in the office at the time, discussing the details of my next physics competition with the teacher. That's how I ended up witnessing the scene firsthand. Liam stood protectively in front of Emma, gripping her wrist tightly with his uninjured hand like some kind of knight shielding his princess. His expression was unwavering as he declared to everyone present, "I love Emma. No one can separate us." I frowned deeply. At that moment, he reminded me of the man he would become 10 years later. In my past life, after taking over his family's business, Liam had managed to climb his way up the corporate ladder through sheer competence and determination. No one dared to mock the Millers for being nouveau rich anymore. At the time, many people in the business world had tried to curry favor with him, even sending women his way. But he had coldly rejected every single one of them. Liam didn't even bother keeping up the act anymore. He had completely torn off the facade. At that moment, he looked exactly like he had in my past life when he defied the mayor. Back then, I had thought he was passionate, someone I could rely on. But looking back now, maybe he had done all of that for Emma. Even though she had been dead for years, he had remained faithful to her memory. So all these years, in different ways, he had been mourning her. A sudden chill ran down my spine. I had truly been blind. All these years, I had been kept in the dark. At that moment, Emma stepped forward and spoke. "Mrs. Miller, do you really think you're blameless in all this? You've always had a strong need to control Liam. But he's a person, not a puppet for you to manipulate. Now he's just in a relationship, and you're already trying to suffocate him. Don't you think you're being too controlling?" Mrs. Miller turned to look at Liam. He averted his gaze, silently agreeing with Emma's words. Disappointment flashed across Mrs. Miller's face, and her body wavered slightly. I stepped forward to support her. She clutched my hand and burst into tears. "Nina, why aren't you the one with Liam? Why does it have to be her?" Because our families had always been close. The adults often joked about pairing Liam and me together. At some point, I had started to take those jokes seriously. That's why, when Emma appeared, I had always found ways to interfere between them, stubbornly believing that Liam and I were meant to be. But now, I knew I had been wrong. "Auntie, I only see Liam as an older brother. We could never be together, so please don't bring this up again." Liam's expression shifted in shock, clearly unable to understand why I was saying this. In his mind, I was the girl who always followed him around, always listened to him. The idea that I would now draw a clear boundary between us was something he had never expected. Emma, on the other hand, laughed. "Liam, did you hear that? She's been distancing herself from you ever since you got injured. She looks down on you. Now, I'm the only one left who truly cares about you." She watched as Liam's expression darkened, then turned to me, her face filled with triumph. "You better remember what you just said. Don't come crawling back to him later." Was there something wrong with her brain? How many times did I have to say that I had nothing to do with Liam? Did she not understand simple words? Just then, the office door swung open, and my father walked in, his face serious. "Who does Liam think he is that my daughter would waste her time on him?" The room fell into complete silence. I had forgotten my competition materials at home, and since my father had some free time, he had brought them to me. He hadn't expected to walk in on this mess. There was an undeniable authority in the way he carried himself. Liam instinctively took a step back, but Emma remained oblivious and pointed at me. "Everyone in school knows your daughter has been chasing after Liam. He belongs to me. You'd better keep her away from him." My father turned to me. I met his gaze and shook my head. In the past, I had truly liked Liam. But now I couldn't wait to push him into the abyss myself. Understanding my thoughts, my father's expression turned cold. "Keep your little girlfriend in check. I don't want to hear her saying things like this to Nina again." Liam obediently agreed. But Emma, completely lacking self-awareness, tried to argue. Before she could say another word, Liam cut her off sharply. Even if he wanted to keep her, he wouldn't dare act out in front of my father. Emma, however, mistook his reaction as him defending me and threw a tantrum. The two of them had a huge fight over it. When I got home that evening, my father was waiting for me in the living room. "The Miller family is struggling with cash flow issues. I have money. What do you think I should do?" I was stunned. In my past life, the Millers had also encountered financial trouble at this point. But back then, my father had helped them without hesitation, simply because of the bond between our families. This time, however, he was asking for my opinion. Perhaps everything that had happened recently had made him more cautious. I smiled at my father. Grandpa's biggest wish was to see you expand the family business. Now's the perfect time, isn't it? My father chuckled, patting my head. You've grown up. I was busy with my studies and didn't pay much attention to what my father was doing until Liam came looking for me. Just because I won't be with you, you had to make your family do this to us? He accused. According to him, my father's intervention had given business leaders who once hesitated due to the ties between our families the confidence to strike. Now the Miller family was crumbling under pressure. If you convince your father to help us, I'll consider being with you. I was speechless. No wonder Liam had fallen for Emma. Neither of them seemed to understand basic human decency. I had told him countless times that I didn't like him, but he acted as if he were deaf. He still deluded himself into believing I was deeply in love with him. I looked at him coldly. Liam, don't overestimate yourself. Not everyone likes you. I used to see you as an older brother. Now, you're not even that. From now on, don't look for me. Treat me like a stranger. But Liam acted like he hadn't heard me. Nina, after everything I've done, don't you think you're overreacting? All you want is to be with me, right? If you get your father to back off, we can be together. Otherwise, you'll never have me. I found it hilarious. I told him to get lost as far as possible. Just looking at him made me nauseous. Liam's face darkened, his arrogance still intact. Before leaving, he sneered, "You'll regret this." Even sitting in his wheelchair, his back was stiff with defiance. After that day, I never spoke to Liam again. We barely even crossed paths. Emma, however, seemed determined to flaunt herself in front of me. She would intentionally show off her designer handbags, making sure I noticed. Liam bought me this as an apology gift. He said only something this expensive was worthy of me, she bragged. Nina, I doubt your family could afford something like this. It cost tens of thousands. Her tone was full of smugness. I smiled. The Millers were struggling financially. Yet Liam still had money to buy her expensive gifts. His love was truly deep. Since he was so devoted, I decided to give things a little push. During a casual conversation, I accidentally mentioned this to Mrs. Miller. When she found out Liam had been buying Emma luxury goods, she stormed into the classroom, grabbed Emma by the hair, and dragged her out. You little tramp. All you do is seduce my son and take his money. You have no shame. Before the Miller family gained wealth, Mrs. Miller had done all sorts of hard labor. She was strong. Within moments, she had Emma pinned down, slapping her repeatedly. Emma's fair-skinned face quickly swelled with red marks. Liam, still in his wheelchair, tried to intervene but ended up falling to the ground. He could only watch helplessly as Emma was beaten. The commotion only stopped when Emma passed out. Later, I heard she had fainted because she was pregnant and had gotten too worked up. When I heard the news, my jaw nearly dropped. Pregnant? Impossible. Liam was infertile. In my past life, after we got married, a medical exam confirmed that he was sterile and could never have children. There was no mistake. There was only one possibility. The child wasn't his. I had assumed that once Emma got together with Liam, she would cut ties with her other lovers. I never expected her to be bold enough to get pregnant. After discovering her pregnancy, Emma insisted the baby was Liam's. She successfully moved into the Miller household. Rumors spread that the Millers valued the baby immensely, giving Emma the best food and care, treating her like a treasure. Liam even stopped going to school, staying home to take care of her. Our classmates were in awe. If I had a love like that, I wouldn't mind having a baby either. I heard they even plan to retake the college entrance exams together after the baby is born. Others scoffed. Skipping school to have a baby? How stupid can you be? I completely agreed. Getting caught up in romance was the worst mistake a student could make. Senior year was getting more intense and study sessions stretched later into the night. One evening, as I returned home late, I happened to overhear an argument between Liam and his mother in the courtyard. If it weren't for the fact that the men in this family have fertility issues, do you think I would have allowed her to stay? Mrs. Miller sneered. Once the baby is born, I'll send it away. She has no place in this family. Mom, you can't do that, Liam shouted. Besides, just because Dad had trouble conceiving doesn't mean I have the same problem. Emma and I will have more children in the future. She's going to be the mother of my kids. You can't kick her out. So, Liam still didn't know he was infertile. He was actually looking forward to the baby's arrival with excitement. I smirked. If he was so full of hope, wouldn't it be more devastating for him to learn the truth after the baby was born? Let him be happy for a little while longer. I focused on my studies, only occasionally hearing updates about their family through gossip. Apparently, Emma had completely dropped her innocent act. Now that she was carrying Liam's child, she ruled over the Miller household. If she couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, she would make sure the whole family stayed awake with her. If she craved something, Liam had to fetch it immediately, or she'd threaten him using the baby. The Miller family had been tormented endlessly. The next time I saw Liam, he looked exhausted, his whole demeanor drained. I ignored him and kept studying. Before long, the physics competition came to an end. I won first place, which meant my college entrance exam score would get a significant boost. With this advantage, I was sure I'd get into my dream university. That night after I received the award, Liam came to find me. I instinctively stepped back, keeping my distance. Liam let out a bitter laugh. Do we really have to be like this? I found it strange. Our relationship had already deteriorated beyond repair, yet he was still saying things like this. As I turned to leave, he stopped me. Nina, I had a dream. A dream? In it, I won first place in the competition. Did he regain memories from his past life? I stared at him intently before replying. Sounds like just a dream. You can't even hold a pen now. How are you going to take an exam? Liam fell silent. I walked away without looking back. From that day on, Liam started sending me text messages every day. He wrote about how he dreamed we went to the same university, how we dated, how he even proposed to me. I got so fed up that I blocked his number. I focused on studying. No way was I going to let that dog of a man disturb me. Whenever we crossed paths, Liam looked like he wanted to say something, his eyes filled with complicated emotions. I had my bodyguard stand in front of me, blocking his gaze completely. Eventually, Liam started avoiding me altogether. I figured that, in his dreams, he had probably seen everything he had done to me in our past life. Good. Without him pestering me, I could focus on studying. The days passed, and like every other senior, I buried myself in preparation for the college entrance exams, studying from early morning until late at night. The night before the exams, my mother, feeling sorry for how hard I had been working, insisted I go out for some fresh air with friends. Under her repeated persuasion, I stepped outside. But halfway down the road, I ran into the same thug who had injured my arm in my past life, right before my college exams. Fortunately, my bodyguard had been keeping watch and acted swiftly, pinning the man down and dragging him to the police station. As I looked at the man, I felt a moment of disorientation. This time, I had no ties with Liam, so why did this still happen? My bodyguard escorted me home safely. When my parents found out, they were so anxious they didn't sleep all night. The next morning, they personally took me to the exam hall, bringing extra bodyguards along to ensure nothing happened. Once the exams were over, I hired a private investigator. Ever since my rebirth, I had someone secretly investigating Emma. I had gathered plenty of evidence, photos of her with various men. Initially, I had only planned to keep them as leverage. But since Liam had chosen to treat me this way, I no longer had to be merciful. On the day Emma gave birth, I had the photos delivered to the Miller household. That very night, a violent argument erupted at their home. Mrs. Miller furiously cursed Emma, calling her shameless. Mr. Miller smashed things in a fit of rage. Liam remained silent throughout, his eyes filled with cold darkness. Emma was thrown out. The Millers abandoned her at the hospital, refusing to cover any medical bills. Within days, Emma was outside the Miller estate, clutching the baby and wailing. I gave birth to a child for your family, and now you're throwing me away? Do you have no conscience? After childbirth, Emma's figure was no longer as delicate as before, and her once fair complexion had started to show signs of wear. Her hysterical behavior made her look like nothing more than a desperate, washed-up woman. Emma was nothing like the delicate girl she used to be. The Millers never showed up. They let her stand outside under the scorching sun, completely ignoring her cries. As time passed, more and more onlookers gathered in front of the Miller estate, whispering amongst themselves. Only then did Liam finally come outside. But there was no love in his eyes when he looked at Emma. His voice was cold as he said, "I'm not raising another man's child. Give up already." Emma burst into tears, trying to throw herself into his arms. "Liam, you can't say that. This is your child. You can't just abandon us." Liam, confident after the DNA test results, scoffed. "Then tell me, how did two people with monolids suddenly give birth to a baby with double eyelids? A genetic mutation?" Emma had never been good at academics. She had no idea what he meant. All she knew was that she couldn't lose her grip on him. She'd been living comfortably in the Miller household, pampered and cared for. There was no way she wanted to go back to her impoverished life. Liam was her last lifeline, and she wasn't about to let go. "Are you regretting being with me? It's because of Nina, isn't it? You think I'm not as beautiful as her after having a child, and now you want her back, don't you?" Watching them from the crowd, I felt like I had just swallowed a fly. Both of them were completely delusional. I quietly stepped back, wanting nothing to do with their mess. Just then, someone in the crowd spoke up. "Miss, did you not pay attention in school? Two people with monolids can't have a baby with double eyelids. You should go find the real father instead." The crowd erupted into laughter. Emma's face turned red and then pale. No wonder the Millers had abandoned her in the hospital. They had already figured out the truth. Holding the baby tightly, she hurried away, too ashamed to even lift her head. I thought this would be the end of it. But then Liam came looking for me again. "Nina, I was wrong," he said. "I never expected Emma to be that kind of person. I can't believe I treated you like that because of her. Can you forgive me?" I frowned. Liam continued, "If only you had stopped me back then." This life had taken a completely different path from the previous one. Because I hadn't stopped him, Liam had gone from a golden boy with a bright future to a high school dropout. The child he had cared for so much turned out not to be his. Everything about him was different now. He had lost all of his previous arrogance. "Can we go back to how things were?" he asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I asked him, "Was it you who sent someone to break my arm before the college entrance exams?" Liam's eyes flickered, and he stammered, unable to give me a clear answer. I had him thrown out immediately. That summer, I joined my father's company. Using the knowledge from my past life, I stole key business deals from the Millers, accelerating their downfall. On the day the Millers declared bankruptcy, the police showed up with handcuffs, arresting Liam for intentional assault. The thug who had tried to attack me before my exams had confessed everything in prison. Liam's parents had already been crushed by their company's collapse, but his arrest was the final blow. Mrs. Miller completely lost her mind. One day, a car plowed into a young mother and child, running them over repeatedly. From the security footage, it was clear it was Mrs. Miller and Emma. I put down my phone and stopped paying attention to anything related to their family. They had nothing to do with me anymore. When summer ended, I entered my dream university. I got along well with my roommates, participating in all sorts of activities. During my free time, I worked at my father's company, where he praised my business instincts. He even started letting me handle the company's core operations. I couldn't help but think back to my past life. Because of one sentence from Liam, "A woman should have a stable job," I had chosen to become a university professor instead of joining the business world. Meanwhile, he had followed my father around, pretending to be capable and reliable, earning my father's trust. After my death, my father, devastated, handed everything over to Liam. That was why my family had collapsed so quickly. But this time, I used my knowledge of the future to enter emerging industries and made a fortune. Because of my success, many people watched my every move, following my investments, hoping to profit off my decisions. With my achievements came a growing number of admirers. One evening, while having dinner with one of my suitors, I spotted Liam. He was working as a busboy, carrying plates at the restaurant. After serving time in prison, he couldn't find a decent job. When our eyes met, he froze, his grip slipping. The plates shattered on the floor. The restaurant owner stormed over and scolded him. Liam stood there numbly, silently taking the verbal abuse. "Do you know him?" my date asked. I shook my head. "No, let's go inside and eat." That was the last time I ever saw Liam. My vibrant, fulfilling life was only just beginning.